So in this video, I want to talk about what I call painting ugly. And that's not a joke. I'm not being sarcastic. I literally mean that you should paint ugly when you're up close. Now, you've probably had this experience where you go into a museum and you're looking at a painting, a beautiful, realistic painting. Sargent is a classic case of this. And you get up close and it just looks like a bunch of paint. And then you step back and it looks like a beautiful painting. And it's sort of a marvel. It's like, wow, look how when you look up close, it doesn't look like anything, but when you get back, it looks like a dress or whatever it is. So I just want you to understand that this is really about like how when you're sitting there working on your painting, I have videos where I talk about painting from 7 feet away or making your decisions about what's right or wrong with your painting from 7 feet away, but obviously you can't paint from 7 feet away. You got to paint up close. So when you're up close and you're looking at what is the difference between my painting and my source image, that is a really big, it's really important that you think about this in the right way. And so in this video, what I want to talk about is actually just putting in your values, and you can even paint them, ugly, and everything will be just fine. So let's look at a photograph, a source image. Let's say if you were going to be painting a beard and you're looking at this image here, it looks like almost impossible because you've got to paint all these hairs and everything's in there. And, where do I even begin? It would take you forever to try to paint, every one of those hairs. But now let's look at, first of all, how Sargent would paint a beard. So this is a beautiful, realistic painting, as you can see. But if we zoom in really close, you can see that the beard is just, almost a smear of color. There's hardly any indication at all that there's any hairs or anything in there. And that's because Sargent knows that all he has to do is just put in your values, leave it a little messy maybe, paint with an abstract stroke a little bit or whatever, but you just put in your values. You don't blend, you don't fix, you don't try to paint all the hairs. And when people get back, they'll see it as a beard. And if we look at the famous Russian artist Repin, it's the same thing. If you look at this image of a man, this is a highly realistic painting. But if we get in close, you can see that there's almost no indication of all the hair in the beard at all. It's really just these values. So getting back, when you do judge your painting from 7 feet away, you're looking for where your value problems are. And this is something that I, preach in my classes. It's like one of the biggest things and biggest hurdles that artists have and my students have. And that is where they're trying to paint exactly what they see instead of just putting in your values and painting ugly. Now, let's look at a few other examples. If you look at this beautiful landscape here, and I won't even try to pronounce this artist's name, but if we look at the grass and the chickens and everything, it's a beautiful, realistic painting. But when you get in here close and look at the grass, you hardly see any indication of blades of grass or anything like that. He's just putting in his values. Now he also hasn't softened it all up with a big soft brush. It's got some texture on the surface. There's abstractness in what he's painted, but it looks nothing like grass up close. He's just putting in his values. So let's look at another example. This is by another Russian artist who I won't try to pronounce the name of, but I just love this painting. And if you look at, say, the cloth on the table, if we get in close, it looks nothing like cloth. The texture of the surface is nothing like cloth, but the values are correct. And when we get back, we see a beautiful tablecloth. So this is something that wasn't always the case with artists. In the early days of realistic oil painting, they actually did try to paint the surface. So if we look at this painting of Van Eyck, for instance, you can look in close and you can see he's actually putting in the razor stubble on his face. You can see that he's trying to paint every little wrinkle in the skin. He's painting even the hairs in the hair. He's trying to paint all the hairs. So in the early days of realistic oil painting, they actually did try to paint the surface of something exactly as they see it. But that is something that, again, there are photorealistic artists out there that still do this. But when you look at the greats like, for instance, Velázquez, who was really the first artist to really depart from trying to paint exactly everything you see. And this is, if we zoom in on this face here by Velázquez, you can see that he's not painting the surface at all. So really, the message in this video is that when you're sitting there painting, and you cannot have the mindset of, I'm going to make this look exactly like that, because then you start painting in the surface. Instead, what you should think about is putting in your values so that the color, and when I say values, I mean the lightness and the brightness of all the different areas in any particular part of the painting should be correct. So you get your values right, and you can just be almost messy. You can even intentionally try to paint ugly. But as long as your values are right, it's going to be a beautiful painting. Another example is this still life by Latour, famous French still life painter. And when you get in there close and look at, say, the leaves and the vegetation between the flowers, you can see that it's very, what I call ugly. It doesn't look like leaves and flowers or anything like that. But he's got his values in there. He's left the texture. He hasn't softened it all up by blending. But this noisy mess, as long as your values are right, when you get back, it looks like a beautiful painting. Before I finish this video, let me bring to your attention that we are now at Geneva Fine Art Supplies, which is my oil paint company. We're actually in production of a new color, which is going to be a very deep purple, which is about as intense of a purple as you can buy. And that color will be coming out very soon. But also we are keeping in stock all of our basic 5 colors, which are the essential palette that I recommend. And a reminder that our paint has the highest pigment load of any paint that you can buy. Means it has great covering power when you're painting. You need less of it to cover the same amount of surface area. But also our paint is non-toxic. It's ready to use right out of the tube. You just squirt it out and use it. It already has the medium mixed in. And there's absolutely no toxic fumes at all. So if you're using the Geneva paint, you can paint in a closed room without any ventilation, without any worry about toxic fumes or anything like that. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.